something that parents worry about from the time kids leave for school in the morning until they get home in the late afternoon. It's called bullying. My next guest, Joe Wojcik, alias Joe the Biker, is considered an expert on bullying, and for good reason. He's developed the Say No to Bullying Today program and founded the nonprofit organization Yubbie Foundation. He has appeared weekly on the award-winning ABC affiliate WGGB's segment Bully Busters and has authored 2 books on bullying, Yubbie, The Fall and Rise of the Everyday Joe, and Call Me Yubbie. He uses the persona of Joe the Biker to reach 100,000 students nationwide and helps parents via educational material, including his free Parents Guide to Bullying. This morning, Joe joins us on Mid-Morning Magazine. Hey, good morning, Joe. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Mike, my pleasure to be on your show.
This is a very timely subject that is on everyone's mind, and I look forward to this interview. Joe, is bullying something new that's been happening, or is this something that's been occurring for a long time, or we're just now starting to hear more about it? We're becoming more aware of the situation.
Well, I think in actuality, it's been around for some time. I mean, bullying is really about taking control. And I'm 61 years old just a couple of weeks ago, and I was bullied when I was a child, and they called me Yubbie. And I was in 4th to 6th grade when it really happened in my life. So bullying has been around for a long time. I think people are becoming more aware of it, but one of the other variables that I didn't have back 60 years ago was the internet. And now cyberbullying seems to be a very important topic because it's very anonymous and it's a tool that kids use to get control or harass or humiliate other students.
Joe, you had kind of mentioned it just briefly there, the fact that early on in your life, you certainly were a victim of bullying. Kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the name Yubbie was a name coined about from a song that came out back in there, Yummy, 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 I Got Love in My Tummy.
Oh,
and,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so I was overweight, I was very different, and the student at my school that was a bully, who so happened to be at the local pond where we all swam, and they heard that song, and hence I got nicknamed Yubbie from that point on. But it wasn't just a name calling, and that's what I try to explain to children when I go into their schools as Joe the Biker. It was more the mean things that kids did to me. It was the harassment, the humiliation that really caused so much pain in my life. And it does cause pain. And anybody that is targeted, when they internalize it, they begin to lower their self-image. And that's when it has a very long-term effect. My bullying went on from that to about 8th grade. At that time, I weighed 280 pounds and I was 6'2". So when I went to high school in another town, the bullying stopped. But it had a tremendous effect on me then and scarred me from several of the traumatic experiences I had all the way through life.
And you know, Joe, the bad thing about it today is the fact that some of these kids, you know, bullying on the internet and whatever, some of these kids, it gets so bad that we've heard cases, we've heard news stories of these kids that actually end up taking their life, which is really a sad thing.
I hate to say it, Mike, but I was one who attempted it. And I just did a presentation the other day in front of the Rotary, and I usually get very choked up when I start talking about the exact incident that caused me to go to the floodgates of the Housatonic River and stand there as a young man and think about jumping off. Because I felt very alone, I felt very desperate. I couldn't figure out how to make it stop. And this is what people have to understand, is that a child, as they develop in their brain, throughout the first 20 years of life, their neural networks aren't really connected to use logic. So it's very difficult for them to see answers. You know, we as adults can sit back and say, well, logically you do this and this and this, but they don't have those connections. And so it's more challenging for them to figure out how to make something stop because they can't see far beyond. They can't employ that logic.
So is there a certain type of individual that seems to be more subjected to bullying than others?
I think someone who's different, So oftentimes someone who's overweight, someone who's very smart, someone who looks very different, someone who has an accent. I mean, it's really about different. And I think oftentimes too, the people that get targeted by a bully are the ones that can't react positively to that type of harassment. So as I tell the kids, as Joe the biker, if somebody says something, just laugh it off, walk away. Well, when a bully sees you do that, all of a sudden they say, well, let's look for somebody else. But when they can see that you're reacting, you don't feel good about it, they're hurting you, now they got their hook in you, and they're going to continue to do it.
Yeah. What are some of the various causes of bullying?
As far as why does somebody become a bully?
Yeah.
Well, it actually, research has told us there's a thread right usually back to the household. Not all the time, but several of the reasons that children become bullies is that they may live in a home where aggressive behavior is allowed. And a good example of that is in a Taunton school in Massachusetts that I went to, where after one of my presentations, a student called another student a name. And the principal asked me before I left that day if I would speak to that student. So we sat down in front of the principal, and I asked him how many brothers and sisters he had. He said he had 4 or 5 brothers and sisters. And I said, in your home, are you allowed to call each other names? He said, of course. I said, are you allowed to scream and yell at each other? And the kid's looking at me like, of course. What are you talking about? Well, here's the important factor. It really is where the home comes into place. What kind of behavior is allowed in that home? The child comes to school and they act normal. So if yelling and screaming, or if in fact a parent when they get angry screams at a child or hits that child when they're angry, a child figures, well, that's the way I should act. So they go to school and lo and behold, they act the same way. So that's one of the reasons, and sometimes inappropriate discipline is another reason. So there are a number of them, but usually it's traced back to their home life.
So are there some telltale signs that parents and maybe grandparents should be on the lookout for, that maybe, yes, indeed, this child is being subjected to bullying?
There are. And that's why it's so important. And as you mentioned before, Mike, I offered my free guide to parents on bullying because there's a lot of helpful hints in there. And one of the hints that will tell if a child is being bullied, over the obvious ones of coming home with bruises and scraps and damaged property, is when a child starts to withdraw. A child may stop eating properly. A child may even have difficulty going to sleep at night. That's why it's so important for parents to develop a relationship with their child. There's continuous communication. So research tells us that families that sit down and eat together have less developmental problems. Parents that take time and spend time with their children can detect subtle changes in their personality and in their behavior, which could be a flag that bullying or something wrong is happening in their life.
So you mentioned that there are some tools available for parents. They need to kind of bully-proof their children. What are some of those tools that are available for parents?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head, and I love that word bully-proof, because we're never going to stop bullying in our society. It's just not going to happen. So the best thing parents can do is help their children understand and talk to their children about bullying. And one of the things is making children understand that it's really not them who has the problem. It's really the bully who has the problem and comes to school and acts that way. They also have to help their children build healthy self-confidence. Research tells us again, a child that feels good about them, that has a good positive self-image, are more capable of walking away from a name-calling event or being harassed than a child who doesn't feel good about themselves. So I think it's important for parents to sit and talk with their children and make them understand that if somebody does something to you, you got to be able to go to an adult at that school and tell an adult. You come home and you tell me, and know, just know as a parent, I will be there for you all the time and I will help you through this.
Another question for you that I had this morning, what about, do parents need to maybe keep a closer eye on what the kids are doing on the internet? Do they need to maybe patrol that a little bit more?
I did a whole series of commentaries on that. They do. Parents have to take responsibility and understand what their child is doing. So oftentimes, if a child has it in their bedroom and they're free to do whatever they wish, it's very hard for a parent to control it. So it's important that a parent understands enough about computers that they can go onto the child's computer, get into their Facebook, see what kind of postings are there. They can be able to detect the internet history that the child is pursuing, let's say on Google, to see what types of sites they've been going to. Because again, a parent has a responsibility. And it's not a friendship with their child, even though they should be friendly with their child, but a parent has an obligation to protect that child. And to do that, they have to be privy to that child's information.
Joe, how can parents obtain a copy of your book, Say No to Bullying Today?
All they have to do is go to my site, www.joethebiker.com, and they can download my free Parent's Guide to Bullying, and they also can get a copy of either one of my books, Say No to Bullying Today, or Call Me Yubbie, which is a fantastic read to help build empathy towards those who are targeted.
Joe, anything in closing for our listeners this morning?
I just want parents to always know that it's in their hands. And it's time that they spend with their children, be it maybe a few minutes every night before they go to bed. It's that communication. It's that channel of always having a dialogue that helps parents the most in bully-proofing their child. Because when their child understands that their parent loves them unconditionally and that they can come to their parent for anything whatsoever, they now have bully-proofed that child.
So we certainly want to thank you for joining us this morning, and hey, keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Mike, and it was a real pleasure to be on your show.